Discover the surprising connection, how one young girl transformed the Italian Mafia boss's heart. Sofia Garcia had hopes bigger than the cracked concrete of her neighborhood. At 11, bright-eyed and fiercely imaginative, she sketched dreams on scraps of paper, transforming trash into treasure. With her mother working doubles at 2 different diners just to keep their modest apartment lights on, Sofia discovered solace in art, a refuge from the pressures that pressed against her small frame. But beneath her spirited demeanor lurked the ever-present weight of their struggles. Without her mom, everything would collapse. Each day, she watched her mother's fatigue deepen, the lines of worry carving into her face. Could a spark of creativity be enough to bridge their fragile world? She felt torn on days when the bills piled high and the walls of their small home closed in. Did being hopeful make her irresponsible? The other kids at school dreamed about summer vacations or their latest gadgets. Sofia only dreamed about enough food and whether they'd have to move again. Unfinished art projects lay strewn around her bedroom, vivid representations of a brighter future, yet each stroke of color was undercut by a gnawing fear. Was she just wasting her time? What if her drawings could never change the reality outside her window? As she made her way home one evening, clutching a new artistic endeavor, a landscape of sunset spilling over the boroughs, a tremor of unease invaded her heart. Staring across the street, she saw the shadows of men exchanging whispers. The Italian Mafia boss, Luca Moretti, lived in the building next to theirs, known for his ruthless reign over their neighborhood. People said he was a monster bound by blood, a malignant curse hovering over New York. The safety of their community felt fragile, like an old story teetering on the edge of a cliff. Suddenly, Sofia sensed the dark energy that encircled him. It was thick, almost tangible. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Luca was notorious for squashing threats without a hint of hesitation, yet Sofia felt this unexplainable pull toward him, the idea that perhaps she could connect with humanity hidden beneath the surface. What drew her to him? As she layered her brushes and colored their world with light, her gut twisted in acknowledgement of her own misguided thoughts. What would it mean to confront him? She directly faced her fear, even as whispers echoed in her mind telling her to stay away, to protect her heart. As dusk fell, the electrifying tension between forgiveness and violence hovered in the air. Would she have the courage to speak to him? Would he listen, or was he too far gone in his world of shadows? A single moment distilling everything they faced. What if love, even in friendship, could withstand the strain of loyalties forged in fire? Would a girl's innocent dreams be enough to ignite change in a heart hardened by consequence? Could her art, her very soul, light a path through the darkness enveloping their lives? The pulse of uncertainty thrummed loudly in her ears as she stood before the looming figure of the multifaceted legacy that was Luca Moretti. The moment hung precariously, any potential happiness threaded with trepidation. Would her naive hope become the thread to unravel a tangled web of violence, or would it tighten around both their necks instead, dragging them into deeper woes? Sofia stood rooted in her worn sneakers, her heart racing against the backdrop of the murky street. The world around her faded as she focused on the figure of Luca Moretti, intimidated yet drawn to him. In her mind, the flutter of possibilities unfolded, tempting her to take the first step beyond the threshold of fear and into an uncertain reality. She clenched her sketch tightly, as if it were a lifeline strung from shards of hope. As she took a breath, the air felt charged. Every cell in her body screamed to retreat, yet the urge to venture forward seemed to burgeon, fueled by each doubt. Could she really reach him beneath the murk of his reputation? Is this where dreams come to die? A voice croaked from the shadows, snapping her from her contemplation. A scruffy man appeared, his eyes glazing with the weariness of a life fraught with survival. He glanced from her to Luca, gauging danger, before shuffling away into the night. Her resolve solidified. If she wavered now, the chance to bridge two worlds would slip into oblivion. Sofia considered what lay within her grasp. Art was her salvation, and she could wield it like a sword, or perhaps a key. She needed to confront her fear head-on, to drench it in colors vibrant enough to overcome the gloom. "Mr. Moretti," she whispered, the sound escaping her like a fragile wisp. Silence loomed heavy for a heartbeat before he turned his attention toward her, his expression unreadable, twisting the glimmer of hope into something more tangible. "What does a girl like you want?" His voice was gravelly, laced with skepticism and curiosity, like he was appraising a rare object. I want to show you something," she stammered, unsure whether this was madness or destiny at play. "Something that could change your mind about," she faltered slightly, "the world outside." "Change my mind?" He sneered, half amused, half suspicious. The way he bore down on her felt like the weight of the concrete surrounding them. A shiver raced through her, but she resisted the urge to retreat, anchoring her feet to the ground. "Yes. I know it sounds foolish," she continued, her voice gaining strength with every word. "But I'm not asking you to change overnight. Just to look. Look at my art, to see a future that isn't just darkness." He sizes her up, his gaze quizzical, and behind it something she couldn't quite name, a flicker of introspection. The shadows around him seemed to shift, drawing in as if they sensed a crack appearing in his armor. "Art?" he mused. "You think that can change anything in my life?" "Maybe," she said, unwavering. "Maybe not now. But if it can grow something more within you, just one seed, wouldn't that be worth seeing?" He hesitated, and in that moment, Sofia's heart thundered, swelling with the urgency of chance. Would he scoff, retreat, or, against all logic, allow the faintest glimmer of camaraderie to spark? The stakes felt impossibly high, and the enormity of their vulnerabilities lay bare between them. Luca's expression softened slightly, an unfiltered glimpse of the man beneath the harsh exterior. Just as he opened his mouth to respond, she realized this was the moment that could pivot their lives. Testing her own inner limits, she nearly breathed out her thoughts. "Please, Mr. Moretti," she implored, "don't throw this away." But before she could process the enormity of her words, she noted the menacing figures lingering in the periphery. The shadows bristled, and she felt the weight of more than just her own decisions bearing down on her. Maybe art wasn't the only thing that needed to change, perhaps they both had deeper, darker truths to confront. As she stood there, poised between two worlds drastically different yet inexplicably linked, she realized this precarious moment might either shatter her not just for today but echo across all her yesterdays, or it might illuminate the shadows of two fractured souls. The challenge of bridging that divide remained. Would fear veer her path onto safer ground, or despair thrust her headlong into unpredictability? What awaited in the silence after she spoke her truth? And just like that, the weight of unanswered questions began to shadow them both, unearthing the subtle complexity that lay beneath their exchange. Would courage be enough to transcend the trap of fate? Or was unraveling a darker destiny just the beginning of their intertwined journey? Sofia's mind raced with the weight of Luca's gaze as uncertainty hulked around them, intrusive and relentless. The shadows ahead loomed like specters, their specters tended to buy reality more brutal than her sketches could convey. In that moment, she understood that she wasn't merely extending an invitation to view her art, she was offering a glimpse into a world of possibility, a broken bridge she desperately wanted to build. "Art can be a mirror," she said, her voice gaining an edge of defiance. "It reflects what we hide inside, giving us a chance to see it differently. You don't have to like it, but you should see it. You may find parts of yourself in it that you didn't know existed." Luca's brow furrowed, calculation mixed with something softer in his dark eyes. He seemed as if he were mulling over a contradiction in his mind, and her heart raced, half hopeful and half terrified. Would he dismiss her like the shadows that had slipped away moments before? Or would he venture forward, pulling her into uncharted territory where his reputation couldn't shield him from the truth? "Fine." The word clipped from his lips, an anchor thrown into uncertain waters. "Show me your art. But I still think you're wasting your time." Sofia nodded, fighting the impulse to smile too broadly, too soon. There was a cost to this risk, she could feel it simmering just beneath the surface of the moment. She wanted to grip the frayed edges of fate and weave them into something stronger, but the weight of her own self-doubt nudged her hesitantly forward. The path toward her studio loomed ahead, a sanctuary that had once only echoed her anxiety but now pulsed with the potential of transformation. Each step felt like a leap into freedom, yet uncertainty wrapped herself around Sofia like a vine, threatening to strangle her burgeoning confidence. As they reached the door, the familiar creaks of wood greeted her, intermingled with the smell of paint and the remnants of unfinished projects. The walls held fragments of her dreams, each canvas another chapter she had poured her soul into. Sofia turned to Luca, his figure dwarfed among the swaths of color and design that spoke of joy, pain, and resilience. "Wait here," she said, feeling the thin thread of adrenaline snaking through her veins. "I'll grab my latest work." "Take your time," Luca replied, his tone nearly deceptively casual, but she caught the underlying intensity beneath it, a slip of vulnerability peeking through the cracks of his feigned indifference. Sofia fumbled through the room, heart thudding against her ribcage, her thoughts spiraling into overdrive. What if he scoffed? What if he saw no value in the heartbeats behind her brushstrokes? Steeling herself against the burgeoning tide of fear, she gathered the pieces of vibrant landscape that mirrored the chaos within, a portrait distorted by the reflections of lost dreams, and a series of small sketches, more personal and intimate, that told raw stories of struggle and hope. With her collection in tow, she approached him, acutely aware that this were the moments that could mark a shift in both their lives. "Look," she began, presenting the pieces with slightly trembling hands, "each of these tells a story. They're parts of me, pieces of the world I've witnessed." He glanced at the first canvas, a swirling storm of color, each brushstroke articulating the turmoil of her own struggles. The shadows in his demeanor seemed to shift, just enough to let a sliver of light begin to break through. "Why would you want to show me this?" he asked, momentarily setting aside his skepticism as curiosity flickered in the depths of his eyes. "Because," she said boldly, allowing her passion to spill forth with every word, "it reflects the truth. The truth that there is hope, even in darkness. We can redefine our paths, Luca. And I believe you can too." The vulnerability in her plea hung in the air, morphing into a fragile connection. He stared at her, the small ripples of recognition and maybe even yearning ghosting across his features. But as she bore her heart to him, the distant murmurs of danger hummed through the room, sinister and insistent. Unseen forces lingered on the outskirts, problems that could dismantle fragile understanding before it took root. A choice lay before her, to delve deeper into the exchange that may ignite change within Luca, or to retreat safely back behind paintbrush and canvas, shielding herself from the inevitable consequences of this encounter. As he shifted toward her work, the tension mounted. What would his response reveal about not just himself, but also the very core of who she was? Would they both have the courage to confront the truths climbing their shadows? And so, in that charged moment, the true depth of their potential connection hung precariously, waiting for the catalyst that could either pull them together or break them apart. Sofia's heart drumming with anticipation, she held her breath as Luca scrutinized the first canvas. The swirl of colors, an embodiment of her inner chaos, spilled over into her thoughts. Would he understand the emotions woven into each stroke? She steadied herself, preparing for whatever emotions his scrutiny might unleash. Luca took a step back, his expression inscrutable, as if the artwork had cast a spell over him. "You call this hope?" he finally asked, a hint of incredulity threading through his voice. "It looks more like a tempest." "A tempest can cause destruction, yes," she replied, her voice firm despite the tremor deep within. "But it can also clear the air and allow something new to emerge. That's what life is, a cycle of storms and newfound clarity." He chuckled softly, a sound that surprised her, yet was tinged with a darkness she didn't understand. "You think I could find clarity? In my world, clarity is a luxury few can afford." There was both a challenge and a vulnerability in his admission, slipping through the cracks in his bravado. For a moment, the role of the artist and the viewer shifted. Sofia saw a man wrestling with shadows, his and her own converging and swirling with the colors on the canvas. Suddenly, their destinies seemed intertwined, both teetering on the brink of revelation and retreat. Then let this be your first step, she urged, driven by a surge of determination. Acknowledge the tempest. Confront it. It may just transform into something beautiful. Luca's gaze flickered back to her, a deeper connection forming as the mask he wore began to crack. Do you really believe that? That something good can come out of the chaos? I have to believe it, she confessed, her heart racing. It's what motivates me to create, to dig through the dark and find the glimmers of light. Fine, he said with a hint of frustration. Assuming I want to after this, how do I even begin? Sofia took a breath, feeling the stakes shift yet again. This wasn't just about revealing her art, it was about awakening something dormant within him. In your own world, what do you consider chaotic? What haunts you? It starts there. Everything, he replied tightly, anger flickering in his voice. The decisions made in order to survive, the people I've had to betray to stay alive. Her heart ached at the weight he carried, and she instinctively moved closer, drawn to him. What if those decisions don't define your future? What if you hold the power to change those patterns? For a long moment, he stared at her, and she felt the full force of his skepticism pressing down like a lead weight. And why would you care? I'm nothing but a mafia boss, he spat, a smile devoid of humor tugging at the corners of his mouth, a villain in your story. Because you're also a person, she said softly, challenging the narrative that enveloped him. And every person has the capacity to redefine themselves. Your choices do not have to be your sentence. Her words seemed to resonate with something deeper, and she noted the slight furrow of his brow in acknowledgement that perhaps she was right, that perhaps there was more than just shadows hiding within him, but just as his expression began to soften, a hard reality tickled the edge of their connection. A momentary flash of concern crossed Luca's features. I have people counting on me, he admitted, internal conflict welling in his voice. What happens if I lose them trying to find clarity? Then they weren't meant to be in your next chapter, Sofia replied, shaken by the vulnerability of his uncertainty yet emboldened by the flicker of hope in her own heart. Finding yourself might mean losing some parts of your past. It's a risk, but to be truly alive, we need to take it. A storm brewed within him, and she could almost see the gears turning in his mind. Just as a new understanding began to take root, the door creaked disturbingly, causing them both to turn. The shadows outside had grown restless, ready to intrude. Sofia could feel it in the air. Danger loomed large, threatening to dismantle the fragile connection forged in their exchange. Something deep inside told her the path ahead would be tumultuous, littered with ghosts of their former selves, each decision surging with potential consequences. As she peered out into the darkness, her heart pounded. What would it mean to confront both their contradictions? Would they both muster the courage to step into this new territory, or would they retreat back into the safety of shadows and silence? And in that dynamic moment, standing before the weight of uncertainty and burgeoning possibility, every nerve in Sofia urged her to fight for change. But as more than just an artist, she now bore witness to the storm that was Luca. A storm that held secrets exquisite and painful, yet longing to find grounding. The unfiltered truth hung like a noose between them, beckoning him to step forward, yet the echoes of the past roared against their reluctance. Would they repel the serpents threatening to strangle newfound hope, or would they allow darkness to reclaim their souls? The confrontation was imminent. Sofia shifted uneasily as the door creaked open, a shadow spilling into the room like spilled ink. She instinctively moved closer to Luca, her heartbeat echoing in her ears as she prepared for the storm, both literal and metaphorical, that loomed on the horizon. The moment was thick with anticipation and fear. What if that's just the beginning? Luca spoke, breaking the silence that hung heavily upon them. The intensity of his gaze sent a shiver down Sofia's spine, and she sensed the chaos within him swirling dangerously. What do you mean? She asked, feeling a knot tighten in her stomach. That he squared his shoulders, the posture of a hardened soldier bracing for war. I mean, every decision I've ever made resonates out there. People lie and die by the blood of my choices. You think confronting my chaos will lead to clarity? It could tear down everything I've built. Or it could build something stronger, she countered gently, imbued with a new resolve. You can't know until you try. And sometimes, dismantling the old is necessary to create the new. His expression remained unreadable, yet a flicker of doubt nagged at something deep within him. You don't understand the stakes. I can't just walk away and assume everything will be fine. Sofia took a deep breath, summoning the courage to push further. But look at what you're holding on to. Do you truly believe that power is worth sacrificing your peace of mind? Your humanity? As he absorbed her words, something within Luca seemed to shift, though he quickly masked it with defiance. You talk about peace like it's a gift. But for people like me, it's a fantasy. I've seen what happens when you weaken, and I won't allow myself to be vulnerable. The weight of his past loomed heavier than the shadows around them, and tears prickled at the corners of Sofia's eyes. But this fear of vulnerability restricts you, stunts your growth. You're not just your past, Luca. You can redefine what strength looks like. He shot her an incredulous glance, a mix of admiration and anger flashing across his features. And you think that's easy? That all it takes is a few heartfelt words? No, she replied candidly. But every journey begins with a single step. Do you want to keep living in this prison of your own making? Or are you ready to confront those chains and find out who you truly are beneath all the bravado? Silence engulfed them, rippling through the air like a tangible force. The tension crackled, and for the first time, she felt Luca's hesitation soften ever so slightly, but just as Sofia was about to press her advantage, a loud crash startled them both, shattering the fragile moment they had begun to build. Outside, a fist slammed against the door, reverberating off the walls like an ominous warning. Whoever that is, they could ruin everything, Luca muttered, his earlier bravado wavering as shadows danced across his face. I need to protect my people. Or protect yourself, Sofia murmured, knowing the stakes had never been higher. What kind of protection leads you further into darkness? He looked at her with conflicted eyes, and in that instant, she saw a glimpse of the man beneath the persona, a man battling against the tides of his own making. I'm not sure I can face them after what we've discussed, after what you've revealed. Then let us confront them together, she urged, swallowing her fear. This is the moment to decide what path you'll choose, fleeing back into the shadows or stepping into the light. Luca's gaze held hers, the weight of unsaid words heavy between them, a bridge to the uncharted territory of growth and transformation. But the urgency of the situation demanded action, pressing down like a physical force that he inhaled sharply, caught between instinct and emotion. This is insane. But I can't pretend you don't matter to me now. The door shuddered again, insistent and unyielding. The shadows outside pressed forward, and the time for decision had arrived. Would he take a step towards courage or allow the past to swallow him whole? With a deep exhale, he took a step toward her, one small movement toward change, and grasped the doorknob, uncertain but resolute. The next moment he chose could redefine not just his fate but her own. As the door opened, revealing the chaos beyond, the question hung in the air like a fragile promise: would they discover strength together, or would they be consumed by the darkness of their decisions? Sofia steadied her breath, heart racing. The confrontation had come, but would it lead to their salvation or their undoing? As the door swung wide, a gust of cold air rushed into the room, mingling with the tension already hanging like a thick fog. The chaos beyond spilled into their haven. A ragged figure stood silhouetted against the dark, his face obscured but his intent clear. Sofia flinched at the sudden collision of environmental chaos and internal conflict. The contrast was jarring, a reminder that the outside world was relentless. Yet, as Luca took a hesitant step forward to confront the figure, Sofia realized the real battle was not merely against external threats, but within Luca himself. Stay back, he growled, asserting a protective posture, but the tremor in his voice betrayed the uncertainty lurking beneath the bravado. Luca, wait, she urged, stepping forward. The defiance rising in her surprised even her. This is your moment. Don't let your past dictate your future. What if he could intercept the storm raging inside him? What if he learned to dismantle the barriers that had fortified his heart against the world? He hesitated for a heartbeat too long, which allowed the figure to push through the door, shoving past Luca. The room instantly transformed into a battlefield, opaque with the scent of aggression and desperation. The intruder, a wiry man with wild eyes, surveyed the scene, immediately locking onto Sofia's presence. "What is going on here?" the intruder demanded, tone laced with incredulity. Luca's posture shifted from protector to protector of a secret, his jaw tightening as embarrassment and anger warred in his expression. The past he fought to suppress now wanted to bloom right before him. Sofia sensed he was faced with the duality of remaining a coward in the eyes of his own life or stepping up to embrace the man he had the potential to become. "Tell him, Luca," Sofia urged. "Tell him what you've learned, what you need to change." It was a gamble, but desperation drives people to gamble on the improbable. In this moment of chaos, she hoped for a breakthrough both for him and for herself. She silently urged him to step beyond the chains that gripped him, to define his identity beyond the shadows of his past. He turned slowly, fixing the intruder with a look that blended determination with vulnerability. "I won't let you disrupt my life or drag me back into a cycle of violence. I'm done with all of it." The intruder's expression morphed, surprise flickering over his features. "You think you can walk away? It's not that simple." With those words, Luca faced not just a tangible threat but the embodiment of every fear that had ever haunted him: betrayal, loss, and the weight of responsibility. His heart raced as he finally grasped the truth he had kept bottled up. He was not just a figure of chaos, but someone worthy of peace, of a new reality. Sofia took a breath, heart pounding in rhythm with Luca's revelation. They were here together, on the brink of a change. Maybe the shadows of his past couldn't swallow him whole, perhaps there was still something powerful inside him yearning for an opportunity to grow. "Luca," she pressed, her voice a mix of urgency and compassion. "Don't fight it. Embrace it. You can redefine your narrative." For the first time in a long time, he met her gaze fully. The flicker of courage ignited inside him, channeled through his breath as he took a purposeful step closer to the intruder. "I found someone who has shown me there's more to life than the darkness. I will no longer allow my past to dictate my actions." The intruder smirked, but incredulity painted on his face. "You're a fool to think you can just walk away from this life." "Maybe I am," Luca responded, "but this is a choice I'm willing to make. I choose a life where I am not defined by fear and chaos." As he declared his transformation, awareness coursed through him. Not only was he confronting an external threat, but more importantly, he was confronting himself. The noise outside was not merely clamor, it was the alchemy of change teasing at his consciousness, daring him to either dismiss his growth or embrace the evolution of his identity. But as the intruder took a defensively aggressive stance, ready to pounce, tension flared once more. The clarity of purpose began to waver beneath the looming shadow of confrontation. Would this be the moment where everything he hoped for crumbled? Sofia watched the struggle unfold, both inside Luca and in the quiet storm outside the door, feeling the weight of their decisions. She sensed that this confrontation could either break them or forge an unbreakable bond, a crucible of transformation from which they might both emerge stronger than before. "Luca!" she shouted, her voice fierce, anchoring him against the pull of fear. "Now is your moment to truly choose who you want to be." Faced with the urgency of everything that lay at stake, Luca's next choice would either carve a path toward freedom or lock him deeper within the confines of his past. Luca's breath came in shallow bursts as he squared his shoulders, feeling the weight of confrontation trickling down his spine like ice. His heart pounded not just with fear but with a newfound resolve, a tiny spark amidst the chaos that yelled for him to stand firm. The intruder was a reflection of every dark moment he'd ever faced, a specter of his past. But now it was as if that darkness had begun to retreat, revealing a flicker of the strength he never knew he possessed. "I'm choosing to break away from all this," he repeated, voice steadier with each word that passed his lips. The thrill of defiance flared in him, pushing back against the fears gnawing at his mind. This was the moment he had trained for, although he hadn't realized it until now. The reckoning had arrived, the intruder laughed, a guttural sound laced with cynicism and disbelief. So you think a few nice words will change anything? You'll always be a part of this life, Luca. You can't just erase your history. Luca felt the sting of the blow but stood his ground. His past was a chapter he'd write anew, not a fate etched in stone. Each encounter, every misstep was an inkling of what he could overcome, what he could evolve from. For the first time in a long while, he was not just reacting, he was responding. Your life doesn't have to define you, Sofia interjected, her tone unyielding. You have the power to redefine your future. That phrase struck him deeper than any insult hurled by the intruder. The realization came crashing into his mind like the waves crashing against the shore. If he was willing to confront who he was, he could take ownership of who he would become. Doubt niggled at the corners of his mind, whispering that stepping away from danger was inherently flawed. What if he failed? What if the intruder dragged him back into a life of shame and regret? Yet just beneath that doubt, a torrent of determination surged. Every choice away from fear was a choice toward empowerment. Luca shifted his stance, channeling the strength of his conviction. He could feel the shifting energies, the dynamics between him, the intruder, and Sofia. The invasion of this moment poured shadows over them, yet beneath those shadows, the seeds of change had sown themselves into the fabric of their lives. Leave us, Luca declared, firmer now. You don't have power here anymore. Not over me and not over my choices. The intruder's expression darkened, a flicker of violence igniting in his wild eyes. You think this is just going to end well for you? You're in way over your head, Luca. In that instant, fear froze, the clarity of purpose surged again. The stakes rose, and so did the anxiety. Yet, as he glanced at Sofia, he saw not just vulnerability, but also unwavering support. A plethora of feelings ignited within him, elation and dread intertwined. He realized their choice before him wasn't merely to engage or to escape, it was a crucible of growth, a reclamation of power he desperately sought. Look at me, Luca said, stepping forward. The boundary between fear and bravery blurred as he felt an intoxicating sense of agency. You can't control me any longer. I'm not the same person I was. Fury flashed across the intruder's face. He lunged forward, motivated by the instinct to reclaim dominance. But that sudden movement unleashed something within Luca, a decision far exceeding a mere reaction. He was faced not only with an external threat but the raw, burning fibers of his identity. Luca took a decisive step toward the intruder, adrenaline coursing through him, a sudden realization crystallizing in his mind. This wasn't just about fighting. It was about choosing a path that aligned with the man he aspired to be. He had the choice to confront fear and fight for a future, to claim authority over his mistakes, his regrets, and carve out a life dictated by purpose instead of pain. Enough! He shouted, voice echoing in the charged air. You are done here. And as he prepared for the next move, he felt the gravity of that choice settling in. Would he take this final stand for himself, willing to face whatever came next, or would he retreat into the familiar shadows of his past? Just as the intruder made his move, intent on reclaiming his own twisted version of control, the room pulsed with tension, and Luca's heart raced with anticipation. The time had come to face not only the embodiment of his fears but, more importantly, himself. Luca braced himself as the intruder lunged, adrenaline sharpening his senses. Time seemed to bend, elongate, as the distance between them shrank into a point of reckoning. Each heartbeat thudded like a war drum, pulsating with the weight of every decision he'd ever made leading up to this moment. He could lose everything or reclaim everything. Instead of landing a blow, the intruder stumbled, seemingly thrown off balance by Luca's unwavering gaze. Luca seized the opportunity, stepping closer, the space no longer a barrier but an invitation to change the narrative. With each inch gained, he could feel the weight of his past swirling in the air, a ghostly dance of memories he had wished to escape. You don't scare me, Luca declared, each word slicing through the tension like a knife. His chest heaved with conviction, bolstered by the knowledge that he was witnessing a profound transformation, a shift not only within himself but also that of the intruder. In that instant, Luca recognized that their confrontation was as much about power dynamics as it was about self-discovery. "What's changed, huh?" the intruder sneered, his voice thick with incredulity. "You think you can just shake off your past? Like it never happened?" Amid the chaos, Luca recalled every failure, every moment of hopelessness, and the myriad chants of self-doubt that had once paralyzed him. Yet, in those reflections, he found strength, not shame. Each scar represented a survival story. They were no longer the shackles that bound him but the armor he now wore. "I'm not defined by my history," Luca said, an echo of his earlier resolve reverberating through the air. "I'm creating my future, step by step, decision by decision. You may have once owned me, but I've grown from the ashes of your choices." The intruder's expression flickered, a moment of vulnerability cracking through the hardened exterior. A realization crossed Luca's mind: the man across from him was also trapped, a prisoner of his own past. But while the intruder reveled in chaos, Luca found resilience in hope. Sofia, watching from a safe distance, sensed the shift. There was a current of triumph coursing between them, two allies against a common adversary. The solidarity fortified Luca's spirit. It anchored him amidst the tempest of emotions threatening to spiral out of control. Unseen yet palpable, the walls of fear that had once fortified Luca began to come down, brick by brick. He realized that fear and courage were not opposites, but dual entities that coexisted, each defining the other. And in this moment of existential confrontation, he tapped into the tenacity buried within him, willing to chase beyond mere survival into vibrant existence. "How does it feel to have your grip slipping?" Luca provoked, his voice steady, signaling to himself that he was in control now. Each word became an instrument of liberation, slicing through complacency. But before the intruder could respond, the atmosphere shifted abruptly. The intensity morphed. This wasn't only personal anymore, it was a palpable demand for change, a groundswell of unrepentant power surfacing from beneath the murky depths of anguish. "You're a fool to think that you can escape," the intruder hissed. But now, his voice quaked with anger and more than a hint of fear, revealing that Luca's transformation was a threat to his very existence. Energized by this realization, Luca took a step forward, no longer running from the darkness but embracing the light that radiated from within. The battle ahead was not merely one of physical confrontation, it was an existential assertion of will, a momentous clash of identities seeking their rightful place in the world. As Luca mentally prepared for the next move, a singular thought seized him, more empowering than anything he'd ever encountered. Reclaiming his life wasn't just a responsibility, it was an act of defiance against every shadow lurking in his past. And just as the tension peaked, a voice broke through the chaos, chilling the air with its unexpected clarity. "Or are you just going to stand there and let history repeat itself?" Those words, sharp and loaded, hung in the air, rippling the atmosphere with new tension, compelling Luca to consider the full weight of this pivotal moment as he braced for what would come next. Would he slip back into an old identity or forge ahead into the vast unknown? The choice lay in his grasp, teetering on the precipice of his evolution. Luca's breath hung heavy in the air, an undeniable testament to the crossroads he faced. The voice that had interrupted was not just a catalyst, it was a mirror reflecting the harsh truths he needed to confront. Each pulse in his veins urged him to act, not just against the intruder before him, but against the remnants of his former self that threatened to seep back in. "History won't repeat itself," Luca replied, his voice a firm echo of his newfound resolve. The initial shock of the intruder's assault had transformed into an empowering surge. The confrontation that had felt daunting morphed into a deliberate opportunity for reclamation. This was his moment not only to push back against another but to dismantle the boundaries he had constructed around his own life. As he shifted his weight, his body felt lighter, grounded by the very essence of self-awareness he had so desperately sought. Memories of defeat no longer loomed like specters behind him, they positioned themselves beside him as reminders of where he had been, urging him to recognize how far he had come. Luca studied the intruder closely, noting the flaws in his desperation, the trembling fists, the flickers of uncertainty betraying the bravado. It dawned on him that the man lunging at him was himself, Just a darker reflection trapped within a cycle of retribution and pain. This realization opened a floodgate of empathy. The intruder didn't just seek to reclaim power over Luca, he was struggling to reclaim a version of himself that had long been buried under layers of bitterness. In a split second, the energy shifted, and the tension morphed from aggression into dialogue, an avenue for bridge building amidst the chaos. "You can't control me," Luca pressed further, understanding now that his bravado had evolved into a profound conviction. "You never could. Your grip was only an illusion. And now, I see through it." The intruder's eyes widened, rage battling confusion. It was as if he was witnessing a metamorphosis. Luca's stoic demeanor had drawn a line in the sand, clearly separating past from present, the old wounds from the resilient new self that now stood before him. "Why are you afraid?" Luca continued, his voice unwavering, aiming to peel back the layers. "What are you running from? You're locked in a cycle of your own making, and I refuse to be another victim of it." The intruder's features contorted. It was a face trapped between loss and the yearning for redemption, marked by decisions that left him isolated. For the first time, Luca sensed the pulse of vulnerability beneath that hardened shell, recognizing the dormant potential buried within the violence. Luca steeled himself, accepting this confrontation as a pathway, a chance to confront not only the man before him but also the remnants of his own insecurities. "I want better for both of us," he said, voice lined with determination. "You've done damage, but your story can change. Just as mine has." Instinctively, Sofia's figure hovered on the periphery, a beacon of strength that quietly reminded him of their shared vision. He turned slightly, meeting her gaze. He understood now that their bond had evolved into something powerful beyond survival, rooted in mutual growth and responsibility. "Let us reshape this narrative," Luca urged, his voice firm, confident, inviting the intruder to reconsider the path laid before him. "Join me in carving a new existence, one born of choices, not fear." In that moment, the air thickened with possibility. Liberation surged from within Luca, propelling him to embrace this challenge not as an adversary but as a partner in transformation. The culmination of their shared struggles had sparked enough strength to challenge every limiting belief carved by their histories. The intruder hesitated, the fire within him shifting as he wrestled with an internal dialogue. Could he let go of the darkness, or was he destined to remain ensnared in old patterns? As the tension ran thin, another voice broke through, this one hauntingly familiar. "You think you're ready to change, Luca? You have no idea what lies ahead." With those words slicing through the fragile moment, Luca felt his resolve waver, teetering perilously on the edge of doubt. The future was no longer certain, and as he stared into the eyes of the man across from him, he recognized that the journey was only just beginning. And with it came a multitude of questions about the identities they would ultimately become. In the aftermath of that violent confrontation, the shadows that once held reign over Luca Moretti's life began to dissipate. Stronger than ever, he emerged from the chaos, no longer haunted by the ghosts of his past, but motivated by a profound realization: fear could no longer dictate his actions. He faced the world anew, a firm resolve grounding him as each day ripened with opportunities. Over the following months, Luca dedicated himself to redefining not only his identity, but the space he occupied in the community. Sifting through the wreckage of his previous choices, he slowly dismantled the criminal network that had once been his lifeblood, opting to replace it with a legitimate business that could uplift rather than oppress. The transition was not smooth. Challenges piled high, threatening to cloud his newfound purpose, yet he remained adamant in facing them head-on. With each obstacle overcome, Luca grew more competent, solidifying a reputation that transcended his previous notoriety. Sofia stayed beside him, her unwavering belief in the power of art lighting pathways lost inside the darkness. Together, they hosted workshops for children in their neighborhood, drawing from their own experiences to evoke passion and creativity. Art became their shared language, a canvas that held dreams, hopes, and resilience. In these moments of mentorship, their community began to transform, looking to Luca not as a fearsome figure, but as a leader beckoning brighter possibilities. Through the support of those who once feared him, he secured partnerships with local businesses, integrating art into the heart of the community. Sofia's most inspirational piece adorned the facade of one of these establishments, a mural illustrating the journey from darkness into light. As townsfolk viewed it each day, they saw their own battles reflected in the vibrant colors and strokes, igniting a collective drive towards improvement. The mural was not merely paint on a wall, it became a testament to resilience, the burgeoning hope within their shared story. The highest moment of recognition came at the annual community meeting, where Luca was invited to speak. Standing at the forefront of the crowd, he felt stitches of vulnerability intertwine with newfound strength. No longer just a mafia boss, he was a voice of change. Addressing vibrant faces turned toward him, he articulated the journey from fear to freedom with clear intent. "We are all capable of reshaping our stories," he proclaimed, his voice resonating against the brick walls of the neighborhood. "What I faced is not my identity, it's a mere chapter of my life. Together, we can pen the next one." With every nod of understanding, every glimmer of hope reflected back at him, Luca felt the weight of his transformation. He had conquered the demons inside, yet more importantly, he had opened the door for others to do the same. His past no longer defined him, instead, it became a launching pad for growth. Authenticity now clung to him, a badge of honor earned through resilience. Confident in who he had become, Luca found purpose in extending a hand to those endure struggles similar to his own. As he stepped down from the podium, the applause crashed around him like waves cheering on a new dawn. In those moments, he understood true significance, how far he had traveled, not alone but with Sofia and the community that now rallied behind him. They were writing a new narrative, one that illuminated paths never before imagined. Now, the pulse of innovation thrummed through his veins, not born of violence or intimidation, but of hope and inspiration, where each heartbeat conveyed the determination to reclaim lives, to foster creativity, and to restore the neighborhood he loved dearly. Each day served as further testament to the merit of courage, the power to face fears and emerge transformed. Standing shoulder to shoulder with Sofia, Luca gazed out at the horizon painted with the shades of possibility. Having conquered not just personal challenges but communal ones, he filled his lungs with a deep breath of unencumbered freedom, a satisfaction brandished from navigating tumult and emerging intact that he had not simply survived, he had flourished. Now, it's time for you to join in this journey. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes all the difference. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Luca and Sofia's incredible transformation. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Your engagement drives this community. Help us grow.